Welcome to Abuse Exposed, a podcast about the secret of abuse. Each episode, we deliver intriguing Christian and personal experiences on abuse and how to overcome it. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional mental or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical or mental condition. Now, here's your host, live from Texas, ISpeakMotivate.
Hello. This is ISpeakMotivate, and I am beyond excited to be speaking with you regarding episode 11, Healthy Boundaries, Abuse Prevention, Healing, and everything in between. But first, I want to thank you guys for the 297 downloads to the Abuse Exposed podcast. What does this mean? Abuse education is being shared, and I really appreciate that because we need our community to grow. We need more people to know the truth about abuse, that is just not physical and sexual. There's many forms, and to not invalidate a victim's experience. So we're very excited. We thank you guys for everything. Now, let's get into the topic for today, okay? Now, first we need to know what a boundary is. And according to Harley Therapy Counseling blog, personal boundaries are the limits you decide work for you on how people can treat you, how they can behave around you, and what can they expect from you. And the question may be, why do I need boundaries? We need boundaries so that we can protect ourselves and hold our values dear, so that we're acting in a space of self-love and true compassion. Because boundaries make sure that people are held accountable for how they treat you. Now, there's 12 signs that you may be experiencing having lack of boundaries. Your relationships tend to be difficult or dramatic. So it leaves you open to attracting people who want to control you. And then again, the worst case scenario for not setting boundaries within relationships is ending up on the receiving end of mental, emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, which is so important to know, because a lot of times we come from traumatic environments, so we don't even know what a boundary is. And I'm going to be honest, I am an adult survivor of childhood abuse, and I don't know what boundaries were about. I would say 2 years ago. I did not. I allowed people to jump on and around, all in between. I didn't have any boundaries, okay? I had no protection of myself because when I was younger, I had no identity. My job was to please everyone else, so I did not matter. So growing up in that situation, I don't have a sense of self. So why do I need to have boundaries if I'm not here to love myself? I am here to serve other people. So it doesn't even come into your mind of what boundaries are and to have boundaries. And that's the thing. When people ask, why do people stay in abusive relationships? Maybe they didn't have the foundation to know that, you need to have healthy boundaries. Maybe their boundaries were violated all the time as a child, and as an adult, they just never learned how to have healthy boundaries. And so there continue to be crossed, and It's just a thing. When people start victim blaming and things like that, you have to understand not all people are educated on what boundaries are, on what having those healthy things to, be able to say no to. Because I sure didn't. I said yes to everything because I associated no with pain. Always in survival mode. Even if I wasn't in the abusive household, I associated saying no to someone to pain. Okay? So we have to understand this before we go around, calling people stupid for staying in abusive relationships. Number 2, you find decision making a real challenge. Without healthy boundaries, you can end up spending so much of your life doing what others want you and lose a sense of self. This means you often don't know what you do or don't want. Faced with a decision, you blank. So many times, people have asked me questions, and I don't know. Don't have identity, right? Because what happens in those abusive relationships, you're stripped of any identity that you have, okay? You say you like pasta, abusers are like, no, you like hot dog, because liking pasta is stupid. And it's crazy that someone would want to control your life like that. But everything, any part of you, the way you brush your teeth, the way you brush your hair, is demeaned in some type of way. You're belittled in some type of way on the smallest things. So you have no sense of making any decisions. Eventually you give up and you let the abuser make decisions for you. And unfortunately, that's what ends up happening in abusive relationships. Your identity is totally stripped, which is why not having that foundation when you're young is so detrimental. And that's why I definitely want to advocate for more educational resources so that, people that come out of toxic environments, and a lot of times you don't know it's toxic, because to be honest, I thought my abusive situation, I thought everybody went through it. I thought I had a great family, and I thought it's okay, to be beaten, because that's how life is. And so your mind is skewed into what the abuser tells you, Now, number 3, you really, really hate to let other people down. You tend to go along with people's plans or worry about letting other people down to the extent that you just say yes. And you may have been called a people pleaser. Okay? And again, this stems from past relationships, or you just have a lot of empathy. And you feel as if you don't do something for someone, that you're just letting them down, when that same person will say no to you in a minute, but you feel like it's a life and death situation if you don't go to the movies with the person at 8 p.m. and watch the movie that they wanted to see, that you're being a horrible friend, and you just don't want that in your life. You just want to feel like, you're here for them and you respect their wishes, and you don't think about yourself. You have a doctor's appointment at 7:30. You have, something at 6:30. But you know what? You're like, okay, I'll cancel my important plans so that I can please my friend to go to this movie. And then you wonder why, you're so you're miserable, and you feel like you're not getting anywhere. And it's because you want to love the person so much, you forget to love yourself. And it's so beautiful that, victims have empathy, and we feel as if people will, be as we are, because we don't think that people will take, kindness for weakness and things like that. We're just like, I'm just being a good friend. I'm being a good child. I'm being a good parent. I'm being a good partner. So they won't take advantage of me. I don't feel like they will, because of how your heart is. And that's how, unfortunately, we get taken advantage of, because people see that we have no boundary up. So a person, they just create a template on how to treat you, and they start that predatory behavior towards you. Number 4, 2 words: guilt and anxiety. If you lack boundaries and ever dare say yes, you suffer from ongoing guilt and fear. You probably feel responsible if others aren't happy. Many people with boundary issues feel guilty for the smallest things too, like taking the last piece of cake, asking someone to move along a bench so you can sit down. And I'm just going to do a personal story here. Okay. So I was so very, very, and I believe I told this story before on the podcast. I'm not for sure, but if I say it again, let me know. But I used to work in a professional environment, and I was scared to go to the restroom because I didn't want them to feel like I wasn't working as hard. So I would hold my urine until it was on my break, because I wanted them to know that I'm here for them. I'm not going to let them down. I'm not going to miss a call. I'm not going to miss a beat. And I was nervous that if I did go to the restroom, then they'll try to fire me. All these false narratives in my head, because I associated not following whatever template to the T results in physical, psychological, financial, spiritual pain. And so then I when I tell you I had panic attacks, like if I did one thing wrong and a supervisor emailed me, I was like, oh my gosh, how I'm going to live. I'm going to end up being homeless. I would go to an extreme, and it was something simple, and it will be a couple of times where I was said to make a mistake, and then I'm freaking out, and then they come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, that was meant for someone else. So this whole time I'm freaking out, thinking that the worst is yet to come, when in fact it wasn't. Okay? And I went to therapy for it as well. I went to therapy, and I let her know, I was like, I'm scared to use the restroom. I'm scared to go to the restroom. I feel like they're going to feel like I'm not a good worker. And I just feel, and so she was like, okay, this is what you can do to kind of help you out. Just document that you're using the restroom, so that can make you feel, a little bit at ease while going to the restroom. And it sounds crazy. It sounds, like this woman is crazy, 25 years old, fearing to go to the restroom. Well, with my background, when I was in my bedroom at night and I had to use the restroom, I try to be as quiet as I can. But on the times I couldn't be as quiet as I could, because my dad worked 2 jobs, if I was loud in any type of way, he heard the flush, I dropped the toilet paper, whatever the case, I got beaten. So what did I decide to do? I decided, you know what? I'm going to make sure my dad isn't disturbed because he works so hard. Let me use the restroom, in this cup.